Welcome to Woodlands North. Thanks for joining us today. We're in the dungeon because we're going to be working on a collar for my wildlife hatchet here. Now, I'm no professional leather worker. In fact, this is my first project with leather, so there's probably going to be a couple of minor snags along the way, but hopefully it doesn't seem like anything too difficult, and should get through them okay. Either way, we're either going to end up with an axe collar or we'll make a mess. What's coming up next? I've actually had this video in mind for a while now, and I've been sort of buying up all the parts on eBay and just trying to find things for reasonable cost, and it's not a very expensive hobby to start if it's something you're interested in. And again, I was intimidated because I just really don't have the knowledge. I've never done any leather work before, but you know what, you got to start somewhere. So I'm starting with what I think is an easier project. The important part is just to not be intimidated and take your time. I'm gonna go through and try to highlight all the steps I'm taking so that you won't make the same mistakes I do, and try to give you as much information as I can along the way. So let's get started. So the first step I did, and I've spared you the pain of watching me come up with this, was to come up with a template. Everyone's gonna have a different way for doing this. Some people might use cardboard. I just elected to use paper here, just thought it was easier to work with. And the one advice I can give you is just to take your time and make small cuts. You see here I kind of marked it out with a pencil, but I didn't just cut out the big chunk right away. I did that with my first template, and then I ended up cutting too much and I had to start over. So I made my general marks, and then I just cut a little bit above them, little bits at a time, till I did end up getting a reasonable fit here. Now you're going to see it's not quite perfect. There's a little tiny bit of room there, and what I'm hoping is that the leather is a stretchable material so that I'm going to be able to work it into these little crevices here. It should fit pretty snugly by the time I'm done. At least that's what I'm hoping. Also, I did cut this a little bit long, you'll see here, and the reason for that is that the leather is a lot thicker, so it's going to fit a little bit differently. So I may end up having to do a little bit of work here to trim this down, but I think that's enough for now, and I think it's a good start. So I've selected my piece of leather here. This one here is already dyed. You may have to dye your own, or you can just use plain leather depending on the color. I think this is going to give it a nice dark look. I think it's going to look nice actually. First step is going to be to trace out your template. So I've just started taping it here. Again, just try to take your time and make everything line up as good as you can. Okay, so again here, I'm just going to do my best, take my time, and err on the side of maybe leaving a little too much material, which I can deal with after. I'm actually going to try to leave the template on here. Not sure if that's going to help me or hinder me, but we're going to try it out and see what happens. I'm using a pair of box cutters here. As long as you're using a sharp knife, should be fine. Okay, so we've got our rectangular piece now, and I've got to cut out the portion for the, I don't know what that portion of the axe is called, the lip, this part here. If your axe doesn't have that, you're golden. Should be a much easier process. Mine does, so let's cut her out. Alright, so here's the cutout. I'm not sure if the camera's picking it out, but it's a little bit rough on the edges there. I don't know if it's my knife isn't that sharp, or maybe it's too small. I kind of like this because it gives me a lot of control, but it is a little bit on the small side. So I've got this sort of edging tool here I can use. I don't know if you could see that, but it's cleaning it up quite nicely. Upon closer inspection, I see it's still a little bit rough there in the edges. So what I'm going to do is just take a little sandpaper and just touch it up ever so slightly here. Just try and get all those rough spots out. If you can see, little fibers are coming off, which is perfect. Next thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to use this tool here. You can probably just use something homemade. It's just this is called a burnishing tool, but all it's really doing is flatten out and finish this edge a little bit better. What I'm going to do is just take a little bit of water and just get that edge a little bit wet, and then use this tool here, and you just got to take your time and work this a little bit. The point is to create friction to kind of flatten out that end. Again, take your time with it. You're not rushing here. So I don't know if you can see there, it's really flattened this out nicely, and I could probably continue to work that, but you're not really going to see this. I just kind of wanted it, I didn't want those little pieces of leather, they're going to flake off, weaken the edge. I'm not sure that it does that, but I think it just seems that it'll work better this way. Okay, this step is optional. What I've got here is like a finishing wax, and I'm just going to take a little bit of this. It's been out in the garage, so it's a little bit not as easy to work with as I'd like, but this may not be needed for you. I'm going to do all the edges because I use my axe in damp and winter conditions quite often, so I'm going to just put this into the edges there and work it in with the burnishing tool. Also, I don't know if you could kind of see, it's actually giving it a bit of a darker color as well, which is nice. I think it actually looks quite nice, so let's get that done. Now that I've thought about it, maybe I should have done the wax in the next step, but it kind of is what it is now. I need to put this in water, so I just have some warm water here, not super hot, and I'm just going to keep it in here for a couple of minutes, and hopefully what that's going to do is get this really stretchy, and I'm able to kind of stretch it on the axe. So I just took that off, pat it down with a paper towel, and I guess we can just kind of get an idea of where we're at here. So pretty good. Still a couple of little gaps. I'm going to try to tighten that up as much as I can by stretching this onto the axe. There we go. After playing with this a little bit, stretching it out, I did need to make a small incision here just to get it to fit, but looks like it's pretty close to there. So I think it's good enough, and when we lace this up, give us a little more stretch, so I think it'll actually look pretty good. Okay, so one thing we need to do now is there's a lot of excess on the sides here. I don't really want this to wrap around and each side touch each other. There's going to be a little bit of room, a slit down the back, and then we're going to try to lace it up, and I think it's going to stretch pretty nicely. So I've got this scoring tool here, and I've just sort of measured out just a little bit past the width of the axe. Okay, and that gives me an approximate area that I can cut. Okay, so I've trimmed this side. Now I'm going to do the same thing over here. So again, that just gives me my approximate area that I need to cut. Again, I'm going to leave some extra material here because I'd rather have too much than too little at this point. Okay, next step here, I'm going to put these grommets in. This is optional. Some people just poke holes in the leather. I just think that this is going to look nice, and I think it's going to last a little bit longer as well. These aren't the greatest quality grommets, but I think they're going to be okay, and I think they're going to actually look pretty good on there. I'm going to score a little area where I want it to go. That looks about right there. Same thing on the other side. So that's roughly going to be the middle. Now I'm going to have to measure out some holes. Right at the lip here, I'm going to mark 1 inch, 2 inch, and 3 inch. Same on this side. Okay, and I just want to make sure that they're generally level. Don't need to be perfect, but I think they're pretty close. Next thing we're going to need one of these. It's a hole punch. Same on the other side. These are going to need to fit through, and it doesn't look like these are quite the correct size, so I'm going to just stretch them out with this tool here. I don't know what this is called, like an owl or something. If you know, put it down in the comments. But the point is, we want to make it just big enough that the grommet fits, but isn't loose. Okay, so there we go. Fits in but doesn't fall out. Okay, and now you need this tool here, a little crimper. There's other ways to do this as well. You can have, I think there's like a tap set where you can just tap these down, but for these ones it seems to work just fine doing it this way, and it's definitely much easier. So you line up that side. So there you go. And again, you see what I mean, these are the cheap ones. They break on this side. I think they're designed to do that. They're just really inexpensive ones. There's ones that roll over quite nicely, but since this is on the inside, You're only going to see this side here, so I think we're okay. So this is our almost finished product here. The only thing we've got left to do is to actually string this on the axe. I did not have a leather lace, so I just cut a small piece of leather out here. It's not very good, but I think it'll do for now till I can actually find one. So let's just kind of have a look here. It's pretty good. So let's just see what happens here. I'm going to try to torque this down a tiny bit more. And I broke it. Well, I guess we're using paracord. Alright, so that about completes our project here, but I do have some things that I've learned and I do want to share them with you so you don't make the same mistakes. So number one, and I really should have thought more of this, I did not have the sheath on while I was working, and that's because I had to kind of measure it on here, and the sheath goes right where I need to work. So after a while I just kind of took it off and I left it off, and of course as you're working here and you're stretching, you're getting your hand pretty close here. You could drop this, and it's pretty sharp. Don't want anyone to get hurt. So in hindsight, I probably should have taped something here, or a piece of cardboard with tape, whatever, just made something makeshift so that the edge doesn't end up burying itself into my hand or leg or something like that. Number two, you see these grommets here? I put them an inch apart, and it seemed like a good idea at the time. And not that an inch apart is bad, but I probably should have, I started from the bottom here, and I probably should have just taken the space from top to bottom and evenly spaced out the 3, or maybe even put 4 grommets in here. And the reason is just because the top is a tiny bit loose. It's not bad, and it may be okay. I'm going to take it out and try it for a while, but if worse comes to worse, I can probably pop in there and put a couple more grommets if I have to. Number 3 would be have all the materials available. I did not have a leather lace. I tried to make one, and it broke into pieces here. So I actually did prefer the way the leather was really able to torque it down. I think it looked a little nicer, and not that this even looks all that bad. I think it actually looks pretty decent, but I just seem to like the look and the way the leather tightened a little bit better. So make sure you just have all that available. And the last thing I want to say, and I don't know if you can see this, but there's some little tiny indentations in the leather collar. Not a big deal, because when you go out in the field, you're going to mar this up a little bit anyway. But if you want to keep your work looking good till the end, you probably just want to put a towel down or something soft, because this surface is pretty rough, and you know, it just kind of marred it up a bit. But all in all, it was a good project. I was pretty intimidated by it first, so don't let yourself be intimidated. I was kind of putting it off, saying I don't really know how it's going to turn out. It's not going to look that good. You know what? After doing it, I'm really glad I just got up this morning and said, you know what, I'm doing this. I'm going to get it done. Didn't really have it all that planned out. So if you're planning on doing it, like I did, I'd say just order the materials. They're not that expensive. If you don't have all these tools, there's some ways around the things I did. You can have some fun researching that as well. And if you do try it, please write down in the comments. I'd love to know. Love to know how yours turned out, and you know, just see what ideas you come up with, because your design will probably be a little bit different, and we can all learn from each other. Really hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, consider subscribing to my channel, or even give me a big thumbs up. It's going to help me out a lot. And as usual, I really hope that I see you in the next video. Till then, take care.